How's it going, guys? So with the announcement of the Keepers of the Flame as well as release of the patch notes, I decided to make an updated guide to my delving strategy / league start guide, because I believe most of the stuff that I mentioned no longer makes sense or it's outdated. I'm gonna try to make it as digestible as possible for new players, so it's going to be a little bit longer, but I'm gonna put the timestamps down below if you are only interested in certain elements of what you should be doing on league start or with overall delving. Let's mention the changes that are coming to Delve first. One of them is that we'll be able to get more gold in Delve, which is pretty huge, because before, when I was upgrading my town or I was trading, I was pretty short on gold, but that no longer will be a case, which is super nice, especially since they're going to be changing the trading. Second change is that there will be ascendancy connected to Owl, which is a boss that can be found in a depth 130 and below. Now, unfortunately, we don't know any information regarding this ascendancy, but let's assume that it's mediocre and only few people will be interested in this ascendancy. It might change the way we do Delve, because we need to find a build that is good enough to kill one of these bosses at dual HP, because obviously people will only be joining to get free carry on this boss. Another change is that this Delve mod, which is skill effect duration for curses, will no longer be able to drop in Delve, but it doesn't matter because that's something, first of all, we're not interested in, and second of all, it barely sold. Now, the biggest question I think people will have is why Delve? Most of the time, usually when new league is coming, you don't interact with it at all if you are in Delve, which is true. However, I believe Delve is super easy to understand. If you are someone who comes from Path of Exile 2 or from other games and you want to get into it, you want to get pretty decent currency without, studying for hours, swapping strategies because different strategies work day 1 to day 5, you can just do Delve, get some currency. Most of the things that come with this league in particular, like the buffs with the hands, are tradable, so you can just buy them of other players, craft them. So I believe Delve should be super nice this league overall. Before I explain all of the important notes to you, let's explain the type of delving that you do. I personally think there's two types. One of them is called darkness delving and one of them is called node delving. The difference between the two is quite significant. Darkness delving kind of saves your soul fight and you go into the darkness and blow up walls. Node delving is like you just rush to the node. Usually people will get a secondary weapon with like enhance and phasing with like some movement speed shield, and they just rush. They don't even kill mobs. They just rush to the end of the node and they finish it. But majority of the time you will do the darkness delving. What you need to do is you pick up a bunch of flares. So if you press shift left click, you fill up the maximum amount you can have. So I'll give you an example. If I throw them away and I press shift left click, I instantly stock them up. Let's look up something a little bit longer. So what I do is I follow the card, pretty self-explanatory. If you have decent darkness resistance and let's say you have some energy shield on hit or life on hit, you can actually survive in the darkness for quite a while before your darkness will get you. So for example, I can pick up the Azurite and then quickly get away without even using a flare. But it totally depends on how deep you are and how much darkness resistance you have. Now, in these darkness areas, you can find a bunch of stuff. You can find Azurite, you can find boxes with currencies, you can find resonators and fossils. Pretty much everything other than like super expensive fossils can be found in the darkness. Now, as you can see, this is a wall. You can see it on the minimap as well. And what you usually use is the explosion to break it. Now, sometimes you can peek and see what's inside the area. Now I can guarantee you that 2 of them are fossils. There's not going to be any resonators. The last one is most likely an armor. So if I blow it up real quick and destroy it, I'm going to pick up 2 fundamentals, 4 fundamentals. That's pretty good. Pretty decent currency. They can sell for, let's say, 3 to 4C in bulk. So that's 12C right there. And as you can see, resonators and currency usually shines. So if I, let's say, try to peek behind the wall and I see like this box that is shining, I pretty much know that's going to be Resonator or Currency. Now, Lost 12 usually only drops up to like few Chaos Orbs. It doesn't drop anything too crazy. But you can find Divine. I'm pretty sure you can find even a Lock or Mirror, but the odds of that happening is pretty low. Now we're just going to finish this node, and that's pretty much how Darkness Diving is done. Let's explain the nodes first. In here, you can see the most important nodes in Delve in general. On the left side, you have cities and bosses, here you have curses, and here you have named fossils. Let's start with the curses. Obviously, each biome has its own type of curse. However, at the beginning, what we focus on is mainly going deeper and deeper, so we are not farming any specific one. These are pretty easy to finish. What you're gonna do is you're gonna kill a bunch of mobs and you will get 3 boxes as a reward. Now they are completely random. You can get either armor, weapon or accessory. You can get, if you are super lucky, 3 accessory boxes and get a bunch of rings out of them. Inside one of these accessory boxes are, for example, found 2 rings with conductivity. Now one of them is pretty bad, another one is pretty good. Now they can get even better because there's a small chance that one of the Delve nodes will come in fractured. If I would drop this Fire Res ring with conductivity fractured, that could be instantly like 3 divines. So even though later on these curse rings will fall off with the price and they will be almost, I don't want to say impossible to sell, but unless it's a ring like this one, you won't be able to sell them at all. However, it's still worth to go for these nodes because you can drop them fractured and you can make your money. The first 2 days, just the line for curse is insanely pricey. Even ring like this one, I would be able to probably sell for 120, 130 C the first few days. Later on down the line, I'm focusing on rings like these or fractured ones, but if you get super lucky, you can get up to 5 to 6 rings and you don't care if they're bad. You can make them look a little bit more presentable by crafting live or minus non-channel cost, but it's totally up to you. Next on the menu is name nodes for fossils. Each of them will give you specific fossil, only one. Each of them is different price, so what you can do is if you are bigger depth, let's say 400 plus, you can actually focus one specific biome, so you can farm the one fossil that costs much more than the others. One league, the Crystal Spire was like 3 divines, so what I did is when I was delving, I mainly hang around this background so I can get as many of them as possible. Be aware, at the lower depths, these will be replaced by Smuggler's Stash. It's pretty much there so it can kind of troll you, I don't know. But the Smuggler's Stash appears less and less the deeper you are in. Now what Smuggler's Stash does, it replaces the one specific node you will get into a box that will give you 5 to 10 random ones. Yes, at the beginning, these might be quite profitable as well. If you don't have anything viable like no cities or anything around you, I will just pick it up. You can get 5 to 10 C worth of items, and that's not bad. Next is Aura/Minion one. Now there's 3 different types with 3 different names. However, I think they are very similar to each other, so let's count it as one. This node works exactly the same way like the elemental ones. You can drop weapon, armor and accessories. What's good about this node in particular is all of them are pretty good. When you have a look, they can get +1 specters, skeletons on your necklaces and your armor. Of course, they can all come fractured. There is a minions are aggressive node which can roll on weapons. Obviously, if you roll it on Convicting Wand, it's kinda GG. It's like a couple of divines at the very least. What people usually do is they get one of these wands, they will get a wand with this particular roll, and they try to slam them with recombinators and then fracture it. If you get it on this base and fractured, oh, that's like 30 div. I think it's very expensive. But that is not all. You can also get ring like this one, which will give you life preservation efficiency. Now this one is different. This one is used by aura stackers. So what you look for on this ring in particular is increase energy shield, and bunch of attributes. Because they don't care about rest, they can give rest to themselves. So this one is way different when it comes to price checking. Sometimes people will be like, oh, 17 strength, it doesn't matter. For aura stackers, the 17 strength can make a pretty big difference. Obviously, if it comes fractured, another 3 divine item. But there's more. When it comes to elemental nodes, usually they will give you a fossil that is worth between half a C to 2C. However, if you get the bound fossil, that's around 3 to 4. Now, if you get on average 4 of them, at the very least, each node you're gonna walk away with like 13 to 14 C for the fossils alone. So this node is insanely good. And the last but not least, cities and the bosses connected to them. Now, Owl was always the best thing that you can find in Delve, especially now that Ascendancy is connected to it. This is going to be super duper good. However, the cities are nothing to scoff at either. They will give you a bunch of maps and bubble currency. That you can drop up to like 20 Val Orbs or other small currencies, and especially now and on League Start, Val Orbs are pretty expensive. I think they will be worth at the very least 1 Chaos Orb for a while. Same goes for chisels. What we're gonna do is we're gonna sell all of them to other players because we don't need it for delving, and we're gonna be racking up all the extra currency. There's a small trick when it comes to cities, and that is that if you finish a specific map of certain tier, you will only drop that map. What that means is, if I, for example, finish the iceberg map, and I haven't finished any other map, if I open a box and I drop, let's say, 2 tier 2s, 2 tier 3s, and 2 tier 4s, the tier 2s will, all of them will be iceberg. So you can cheese it a little bit. If there is a super good map in tier 16, let's say Dunes, right? You can finish only Dunes map, and from now on, when you open a box and you open tier 16 maps, only tier 16 you're gonna drop is a Dune. However, that is too specific. I don't think it's worth for other people, but I think it's pretty interesting thing to point out. Now, all of the cities are pretty much the same layout. I'm gonna try to quickly show you one. This build is pretty bad, so I might die, so sorry about that. So as you can see, we are right next to the city, and the second we click at this chamber entrance, it will finish the node, and if I die here, I won't be able to claim any more loot. However, what you can do is, for example, if you are low on your bombs or on your flares, you can click this button, buy your flares, click this button again, and then you can enter the city. Now this one is pretty easy to understand. You stand in the middle of the circle and it will light up the whole map, or at least the part of the map that you stand in. You can cheese it by just running through and throwing the flare down, and it's completely fine. However, what is actually really nice about the city is that it spawns a bunch of magic monsters. So if you are focusing on getting as much XP as possible, what you can do is stand here inside this light for a while, and you will be getting pretty decent amount of experience. However, you can get swarmed pretty easily. So what you can do is just run to the end, you drop the flare down, you quickly drop all the loot, right? This is equivalent of like white maps. So I didn't get anything too crazy, right? A bunch of alterations, bunch of white maps or yellow maps that I could pick up and then use to get more soul fight. What is interesting about the cities is that they're most likely connected to bosses. So if I'm looking for Owl and I find the edge of the map for the blue city, I'll go immediately in there and try to clear as much cities as possible. If I see that the corners are cut off and they're finished, I can assume that in here there's not going to be any more cities most likely, and I can either keep going left, right, or down, whatever where I'm going. But I can consider this finished. Sometimes the biomes are quite close together though, so what you could do is just to be safe, just run this city, and go 1 or 2 nodes to the left so you can have a look if they're close to each other. Now you might be asking what build is good for delving, and answer is if you are between depth 140, which is the minimum that I recommend to people, and like 3 to 400, it doesn't really matter. Even if you have a B tier build, you can clear the delve pretty easily. I've done it with Corrupting Fever when the Corrupting Fever was not the best. I've done it with Bane, which Bane was not good for quite a while. I've done it with the Cold Dot. I've done it with Arakali's Fang. I've done it with the Poisonous Concoction. Okay, possible. That's a good build. But 290 is equivalent of tier 16 maps with Alkin Go. If you can clear that with any B tier build, you're gonna be absolutely fine. Now, obviously, if you have super strong build that it's like, you know, Volcano Fissure of Shaking, you can push it much higher. Even if it's not made for delving in particular, you can push any good build to like 500, maybe even like 800 depth pretty easily. I've seen people playing like Poisonous Concoction, which is good league starter but not for delving, but you can push it to like 600, 800 depth. I've seen people playing even Winter Orb. Like people can push like pretty decent build pretty deep, but after you hit like 500 to like 800, this is when it gets like super hard. I personally will be playing Ignite Elementalist because it didn't get too big of a nerfs to kind of send me away from it. It looks super cool. I can pretty much clear with the Wave of Conviction up till 300 depth, and then I plan to swap to Eviscerate because this build is amazing. Now I'm gonna get like 80% block chance, high elemental damage gained. You can go up to like cap, which is like 35 mil CP. Now I tried to look for the build itself, but like this guy is Smoking Glue. He's saying that he can do 100% a million ignite damage when there's a cap to like 35 mil to any damage over time build. So I haven't found the build I want in particular yet, but I've seen a couple of examples on PoE Ninja. I might make an update and like a guide like I always do, but this is what I go in general. We're gonna be super tanky, and the reason why I want this build is because I can carry people. Let's say if the owl is really that strong and it's really that good and people want the ascendancy from owl, I need a build that can first of all tank the attacks because I'm bad at dodging, and second of all damage it down. Now yes, 35 mil damage if I get to the cap is not too crazy. However, it's completely fine. Let's say I'm gonna stop 600 depth. I don't want to go too crazy this league. I'll definitely be able to carry people with that. Plus there is a tech that I can swap one of these rings if I have like bad mods to swap this build into Chaos build. I'll be absolutely fine. If you are interested in my league start and my swap to Eviscerate, you can watch my Twitch. I'm going to be practicing every single day. Now, I personally don't believe that you should be selling your fossils, at least the one on the top, and the one on the bottom we always sell in a bulk price. What I mean by that is, for example, bound fossils can be sold for 1 to 2C. However, if you have 30 of them, you can charge 4 to 5C. And that makes a huge difference at the end when it comes to making currency in Delve. Now, the one at the top usually sell between half a chaos to 2 chaos per each one, not including dense fossils. Those usually cost quite a little bit more. If I have quite a lot of them on the top, what I usually do is I change them in a stack of 10. And then I reroll them with the red currency. Usually, on league start or the first 2 weeks, the red juice cost around like what 10,000 for one divine. And then I usually come here and I trade 10C worth of fossils for 40C, for example, right? So we made 30C from this. And I click a couple more times. And we got the Shattering fossils. Those sometimes can be sold up to 10C per each one. Now, the reason why we split them in a stack of 10 is because sometimes you can get lucky and hit, let's say, Hollow Fossil. Now, that doesn't happen very often. In some scenarios, when I was very short on currency, what I've done is I was buying the top fossils from other players, I was buying red juice and I was re-rolling them. And I think I was like 20 divines down, and I only have seen out of like these top 6, I think I've hit them only once or twice. So it's quite rare, but it can happen. So that's why we do it in a stack of 10. Now the way I sell resonators changed because of the market. However, generally I always sell the 4-socket resonators for half a divine. It doesn't matter if I put them day 1 and I have to wait until I have like 20 of them and someone buys them out. But this is how much I sell this 4-socket resonators for. I don't think it's worth. I've seen people selling them day 2, day 3 because nobody was buying them at the time for like 5 to 10C. I think that's kind of wasteful. If you are not desperate, just save them. Same thing kind of goes for 3-socket resonators. However, these don't increase much in price. So let's say at the beginning of the league, they're 1 to 2C. You can wait until they're like 4 to 5C each, but they takes like 1 or 2 weeks. So it's totally up to you. Of course, single and double resonators, I usually sell at the beginning. They net quite a lot at the beginning of the league. If they do not sell, what I usually do is, because I have a bunch of the bottom ones, I use them for crafting. I have quite a lot of videos. If you are interested in what you should be crafting with what fossils, just ask down below and I can make special video just for that. And I can give you example for every single fossil in the game, how to use it, how to make as much currency as possible. Now let's talk about the tree. Now this might seem a little crazy. Over the last couple of leagues, I've tried multiple ways. I watched a bunch of videos from other creators. But I personally believe on the league start, you just deadass go Nico. Now some people might argue that if you go Nico too much, you will be struggling with the map completion, right? So let's say we only finished 16 maps, which is... I don't think you're gonna run out of maps after 16, but let's say you just finished a couple of tier 1s, couple of tier 2s, right? I don't have any more maps. What am I gonna do? Just go delve, right? You go delve, you find cities, you find maps. If you don't have enough sulfite to go delving, you just buy 1 or 2 scarabs for 1C. Then you have enough sulfite, you can go delving, and then you can finally finish all of the stuff that is Nico related. Finish this, and then you just start delving. Now afterwards, I taught people to pick up essences, do a little bit of expedition. You can go red exarchs. It's totally up to you. I personally, when I'm delving, right? What I care about is spending as little time in maps as possible. So that's why we pick up all of the quantities, all of the map effects, because in my opinion, this will increase the time you spend inside the delve, and you will start dropping items that are only accessible in delve, right? Because if I do expedition, then I have to do rerolls, then I have to craft items. If I do essences, it's not worth to sell like 3 or 4, you need to sell them in bulk. If you do Exarch, when you start getting pretty decent, let's say, Chaos Orbs as a reward, you have to finish the whole map. So, in my opinion, I'm just gonna pick up everything that is related to map effect, get as much sulfite as possible so I can spend as much time in the delve as I can. With that said, even after you pick up everything delve related, you still have around 60 points to spare. So if there's something you like, pick it up. You want to max out your city and get some materials, pick up Calgary stuff. You can rush bosses and pick up Conqueror, Cortex, and Elder Guardian maps. You can go for shrines, try to fish for Divine Shrine, try to get some Chaos Orbs from your normal shrines. What I like about this tree is pretty much you are easily accessing pretty much everything, and with 60 points to spare, you can pick up whatever you like. The thing that people have the most issue with when it comes to delving is that they cannot find the entrances to one of these cutoff nodes that don't have any roads towards them. Now there's 2 rules when it comes to finding the way towards one of these nodes. Rule number 1 is rule of 2. What it means that if I have an example, like 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? This is how many connections each node can have. Rule of 2 means that if there is a node connected to only 2 other nodes, it's 100% of the time the node with 2 additional ones. So that's the rule of 2. Second rule is that there has to be always extra square between the node that I'm trying to go to and the one that I'm trying to break through. This one, we're gonna use rule of 2. Again, this node is only connected to 2 additional nodes. Boom. Okay, let's look for something a little bit more difficult. What we can do is maybe check Reddit. So, rule of 2, obviously it's this one. It's gonna go boom, boom, because we wanted 1 extra square, so it will go this way and down. What do we have next? The guy is looking for owl. Now, what we're gonna use here is rule of 2, because this is connected to 2. We're gonna go boom and boom. Beautiful. I'll give you one more example in my own game. We quickly find something hidden. Boom. This one is pretty easy. We're gonna try to find one that has a square in between and can connect. So obviously this one is scuffed. I haven't seen something like this in a while, I'm not gonna lie, but I'm pretty sure it should be this one. So let's have a look if it's really this one. If I go north, all my stuff, and it is here. We're gonna blow up the wall. Boom. And now the entrance is open. I'm just gonna quickly spitfire some questions that were asked very often when it comes to delving. Number 1 is, do we do his recipe? No, we don't anymore. The reason being is people are just getting too good at the game, and the his recipe is still okay the first few hours. However, it just falls off too fast. The divine prices increase to like 100 plus chaos just too early into the league, so it's not worth, in my opinion. Number 2, how does Delve compare to like other places or other ways to farm currency? I'll be honest with you, this is not the S tier farming strat. It's like A. It doesn't compare to like Heist, especially now that it got buffed. If you farm simulacrums back to back to back, simulacrums would make you a little bit more currency, I'll be honest with you. So yes, there are better ways to make currency on the league start, but I believe how easy it is, how accessible it is, you can still make quite a lot of currency if you know what you're doing. And that's pretty much everything. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you on the league launch. Bye bye.